Hey, Petty fans. Welcome to episode 3 of the Richard Petty Motorsports podcast. And today is a big one.
Big one. We have got a Hall of Famer on today.
That's right. 8-time Cup champion, crew chief Dale Inman joins the show today.
I thought it was going to be 15 or 20 episodes before we got him on. But
we did it.
We did it. we literally just went across the street and asked him pretty much. And he was like, sure, come on.
Yeah, that's just the kind of guy Dale is, though, you know.
Yeah.
I think you guys, that'll shine through in this interview for sure. For those who don't know, my name is Bradley Sisson. I do digital media here at Richard Petty Motorsports alongside my producer, Chris Sullivan.
Yep, that's me, Chris Sullivan. Pictures and video. I run Petty's Garage social media. Bradley runs all the race team stuff. And we literally just kind of get to create content all day. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, so please check that stuff out and give us a like and comment and, help us continue to grow and keep bringing you guys this stuff. If you didn't get a chance, last week we had Jim Davis, tire specialist on the 43 car, join the podcast. Had a lot of fun with JD, and you're going to make sure you want to listen to that one first because we call out a clip from there in this interview with Dale. Really looking forward to you guys hearing what we had to say.
Yep, and I think we're just going to jump right into this one.
Let's do it. Here's Dale Inman. How you doing?
Good morning. Good to see you.
Thank you for joining us and spending your time with us on this beautiful Tuesday here.
Yeah, the day before election. I mean, they're swearing in of the president, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, I will say, though, there's 2 random and Tigers in this room right now.
They are?
There are.
What year was you?
2010. What year were you?
54.
Woo!
1954. With no face shield. no guard, no nothing.
Well, we'll start out with since you went. What kind of car did you drive in high school? When Dale Inman rolled up in '54, what'd you drive?
I rode the school bus. And if I drove anything, I drove my parents' cars. Y'all don't know how easy it is now. And my saying is it ain't always been this easy.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to get a T-shirt made with that on it and have everybody wear it to the track one day.
They got a big banner somewhere. Have you seen it? When they used to hang them down there in Concord.
We'll have to dig that up somewhere.
Well, it's down there, but the way they said it it ain't always been this easy. It ain't always been this damn easy, I believe, the way they had it or something, I don't know, but then had my name under it. But yeah, that was my phrase when I was still getting around, not limping too bad. I'm good.
I don't know. It looks like you're getting around pretty decent these days.
Yeah, I guess. I hope so.
What have you been up to the last 10 months or so? I know it's been crazy not getting to go to the racetrack like normal.
It's been a different world, and back in the summer, I got a big yard, and it kept me mowing my yard, and I enjoyed it. Mary said I mowed sometime when I didn't need to, and I probably did. And then along come the leaves, and of course we had some rainy days, and that made for long days for me. But you talk about it. We was in Phoenix when it kind of come about, and I was talking to Mike Helton, and I think Formula One had started talking about canceling some races, and I think our next race up was Atlanta, and I couldn't dream it was going to hit us, and I was going to Atlanta. Since then, thank God for television that I've been able to watch that, and that's about what I've been doing. And me and Mary have not been in a restaurant since March, when they cut everything down. We don't mean we don't go out and bring home and eat, but that's about the consent of it. And then there for a while, they wouldn't let us, my daughter wouldn't let us go to the grocery store, and now that's fell off a little bit. And Mary can wear a mask, and I can wait on her in the parking lot. So that's about, and she don't shop no more. She just goes and gets it, and we bring it home.
That's kind of a good thing, though.
It is, and it
spends less time in the grocery store.
Well, and I guess talking to Richard, I see him once or twice a week. We probably think too much about what we could have done, what we should have done, what we didn't do, all kind of stuff like that. But we can't control that, but it's still back behind us,
Mm-hmm. So are you itching to get back to the track? Or has it been kind of nice to chill for a little bit? Because I'd assume this is probably the longest you've ever gone in however many years without going to the race.
You know, the way to go now, they talked to me a little bit yesterday and said, you know, they'd get me a room at Daytona, and through the Hall of Fame I get a hard card. But not being able to go to the different haulers and talk and mingle with the people, it's not kind of what I want to do. I think Richard's going down just because I don't know where he's ever missed a Daytona or not. Because, but I was in service a couple of years, you know, and then there was a couple of years I missed. But to answer your question, if it gets back like it was before early 2020, let me get all my years together. I'd love to go back because, you know, my crew always, or the crew always said, you know, where'd you eat today at? And I'd eat at different trucks and everything, and they made me feel welcome, and I really enjoyed it. I miss the people more. I actually miss the competition of the race, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember, like, you walk into the hauler with a styrofoam container of food, and it looks a lot better than everything everybody else has got, and it's always like, Dale, where'd you get that? And you're just like, oh, don't worry about it. I know people. You know, it's a perk of being Dale Inman. Let's go back and talk some racing. So, you know, I was thinking about like life before radios. What was it like communicating with Richard in the days where you had to use hand signals, and like what kind of signals did y'all have, and did they work?
Evidently they did.
Right.
We, you know, it's just what you had. You had a big blackboard and big chalk, and you know, STP give out blackboards with their logo on the back, which was advertisement for that time, but, you know, probably no television. And then, you know, you bring up that, but there was no pit road speed either, you know. And I think when we first got radios that was usable was somewhere in the 72s long in there. And I think first time we used them was at Wilkesboro. And it worked out good because we'd won the race and had been a beating and bashing between Richard and Bobby Allison, and there was no winner's circle, and Richard kindly stopped on the racetrack, and when he got out, Maurice was down there, and he handed Maurice the helmet, which had his radio and everything in. We only had two radios. Richard had one in the car, and I had one I hung on my shoulder.
Right.
And somebody come up, and I think he was going to congratulate Richard for winning the race, and Maurice thought he was going to take a hold of Maurice, hit him in the face with a helmet, and I said, Lord, don't tear up the radios, you know. And but that's the way I remember that. But, you know, you getting back to, you know, Talladega in '69, we was running 200 mile an hour then, but of course we boycotted the race, but we went back later on with no, and Richard had to read, you know, pit 1, pit 2, pit 3, and all down the line. That's the way you called him in.
Wow.
On the blackboard. And if you give a rundown who was running where, you know, you wrote, if we was leading, we'd put 43, and then if Pearson was second, we'd put his number and all that, and held it up, and he had to read it. And if you was a lap in on somebody, you put a mark in between it, you know. And
wow.
You're talking about the difference in the day, you know. Part of the strategy was if you had a competitor down a lap, you raised, that was your strategy to keep him down a lap. And it's one no lucky dogs or stages
right.
in today's world.
Did you ever have a time where like you put the sign up with something to tell Richard to either do something or give him some info, and he read it wrong or maybe didn't see it and things went a little crazy?
No, not too bad. I think we were somewhere one time, and Maurice was going to put something on the board, and he picked up a rock instead of a chalk and wrote it out and didn't know and held it up, and I think Richard hit a car or something. You know, there's all kind of stuff. But there's many funny stories about that. But you're talking about hand signals. Mm-hmm. A lot of people had it when they put their arm out the window before the window nets and hits the side of the door. That was this pushing, and then if they hit the roof, they were loose. And I'm not sure. Richard used this a lot, but he's made the statements before that me and him thought so much alike that we communicated pretty good. And we was at Bristol in 1968, I think, and now the seats and everything, you heads, and you've seen some of the pictures where Richard we first started with a little dog collar under here and hooked the thing right here. Then we got to where we was hooking to the top of his helmet and run a little cable up here with a spring on it where he could adjust it and held his head up. His neck's about this long,
So this is all stuff that you guys are developing in-house, right?
Well, I'm telling you, it was at the racetrack, and his neck give out, and he was making all kind of hand signals. So Freeman Treadway was in our pit crew then, and I put one of Richard's spare helmets on him. And at one time, we was running tubes in the tires, and where the wheels was welded together, they had a rubber strip about that wide that fitted tight around the weld on the wheels to keep from cutting the tubes. And I got two of them, put one under his arm and looped the other one in it and put it around his helmet. And when we made a pit stop, I of course, I went around and changed tires, and I told the boy that was going to put it on him. And I said, you might have to get Richard's arm, and stick in to get it under here. And he said Richard come down pit road with it out like that. He just hooked it, and we hooked it around his helmet. And it worked decent then, but we modified it when we got home. And this is hearsay, but I think during that time, Pearson said, I don't know what Richard's got, but get me one. But we developed that at the racetrack.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. What was your first impression when you saw the wing cars, like the Daytonas? Did you see them and initially think that's going to be the ticket, or did you have to wait for it to be on track to make a judgment?
Well, see, leading into that story, 1968, Dodge had a regular road car, and we had a regular Plymouth Roadrunner. And for the next coming year in racing, Dodge went to the Dodge Daytona with a wing. And Richard said, what are you going to do for me? Or what are you going to do for Plymouth? I said, you'll be okay without it. And we know better. So, that year we went with Ford. And I think the Plymouth people come down here because I think the dealerships and everything just had a fit. Because at one time the saying was, win on Sunday and sell on Monday. You've heard that story over and over. But so we went with Ford, and somewhere during the summer they came down and asked Richard what you have to do to get you back in a Plymouth. And they said, give me a wing and a nose. So they built a Superbird. And, of course, we went back to the Superbirds. And they probably made it a little bit better than the Dodge because they probably had some wind tunnel time. I didn't hardly know what a wind tunnel was then, you know what I mean? And it was a great car. And then, of course, we had the big Hemi in it and all that stuff, and then, of course, we ran it that one way. We probably, you asked me about the Superbird. We probably only got about a 40% out of it, what it was capable of doing it.
Oh, wow.
If we'd have run it longer and learn it.
Right.
And because there was no wind tunnels, you learn it by racetrack experience and stuff like that. And it was a super car.
No telling what y'all would have done if you had a few more years to test and tune on it.
Well, they didn't, we couldn't run it. We didn't run it the next year. They didn't outlaw it. They just made a rule where the motor that was legal for it wouldn't pull it.
Okay, yeah, right.
But we was at Darlington in 1970. I don't know where it was for the 500. But Pete Hambleton drove the second car. Of course, he won Daytona 500, and Richard Blode on the 13th lap, and won both Talladegas in his. And we only had two of them really to start with, and I think we built another one. But we was at Darlington, and we qualified and didn't run as fast as we'd practiced qualifying. And Richard went out after qualifying. They opened it back up for practice, tore the car all to pieces. So we had to come home. We only had two of them. Pete was in the other one. Come home and got the Road Runner, just the car we ran on the short tracks, just a regular Plymouth.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, boy, we'll be okay because it drove so good, you know. And had to put 2 gears lower in it with the same motor to turn the same RPMs.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know exactly the gears, but we just had to keep putting gear in it until we could turn the same RPM. Then, of course, Richard wrecked it. That's when he was all out the window and all kind of stuff like that brought on the window,
right, yeah.
That brought on the window net.
So talking about the Superbird, what's your favorite race car of all the years that you've been involved in racing?
Well, you know, that was a favorite car, but like I said, we probably I don't know what percentage we got out of it, but they were still more capabilities if we'd have learned it more, you know. And but probably the Dodge Charger in the 70s, early mid 70s,
mm-hmm.
from probably 72 to.
I think we got one of those out here in the museum.
Yeah, and that was probably our best car. But you know, in '67 we had that car that we built in '66, and I think we won maybe 13 races with it, and built a new car for '67, and we couldn't do no good with it. Went back to the '66, put a '67 grill in it, and won 27 out of
mm-hmm.
48 races. That ain't a bad race car, and it's over in the museum also, you know. And so that car right there probably won more. Then it was Grand National, now it's Cup.
Right.
You know, than any other car. Of course, the life of a car now, they say, is maybe one race. I don't know. I don't understand that either, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's wild to think that the same car won, 27 times in 1 year, and however many overall is
Well,
wild.
you know, at one time it was 10 in a row, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then Buddy beat us at Charlotte in, I guess, the fall race at Charlotte.
Okay.
But we blowed a motor, but I don't think we wouldn't have won the race other than that. But somewhere down the line, there was a wreck, and Richard went up in between the car and the fence and tore the right door off. So the door was completely gone. There's a picture somewhere of showing the roll bar and showing Richard in the car, you know. But I think that slowed the car down some. Might have put it in a different harmonics, but we blowed the motor no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite the run, though. I mean, like you said, 10 in a row ain't bad for sure. Moving on from your days beyond, Richard, do you have a favorite Tim Richmond story? What was that experience like?
You know, he was just Tim Richmond. Didn't know nothing. I mean, you know, I guess he'd come from Indy, you know, Indy cars, and got wound up with him, and just free going, free loving, just loved to drive the race cars, and didn't question it, couldn't tell you hardly anything to do, or I'd say, well, me and Richard used to do it like this. That's why we want to do it. Then, you know, won a couple of races with him, you know, won both Riverside road courses that year, and I'm not so sure we had the best motors, but we had some pretty good cars then, and didn't have a bit of trouble with him. Mm-hmm. The only thing that happened that I didn't like that he done the time I spent with him was at Dover one time, and had practice on Saturday morning, and this was before a tunnel or the crossover. He had been to Atlantic City and get back late, and they had then started practice, and he was outside waving, trying to get in, and he couldn't. So that's the only thing that negative but he would drink his fluids, and I'm not talking about alcohol. I mean, you know, water and all that, And his nightlife, I know nothing about it because I didn't keep up with that.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. It had to have been like pretty awesome to, have all your success with Richard, and then also get a chance to, go to victory lane with a couple other drivers too. I would assume that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, but there's more drivers that's done that too. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I won't go into why I left Petty Enterprises, but it wasn't. It wasn't on account of the salary, and it wasn't on account of me and Richard's relation. But
right.
It's just another story, and I've never talked about it, and I don't want to now. But it was tough on me, and I'm sure it was tough on him, to a certain degree, because we were probably together when we was in diapers, and I tell people that, and they say, I know when he turned 80-year-old, they wanted me to do a thing, say, "Happy birthday, King." I say, "Happy birthday, Richard," but this King's thing don't set with me, because I seen him in diapers.
You talked about winning Riverside with Tim. Looking back at the travel to the West Coast back in the day in like the 60s, what was that like? Because like you're saying, it hadn't always been this easy. How did y'all get out there and back in the days before haulers and cell phones and private planes and all that good stuff?
How far back you want to go?
As far back as when did we first go to Riverside?
1958.
Okay.
Before Richard drove. It was Lee was running and running for the championship, which he won that year, and they was a race in, I don't know what the dates was, sometime in the hot summer. But there was a race on Friday in Trenton, New Jersey, 500-mile race. And there was a 500-mile race in Riverside on Sunday.
2 days apart?
Friday and Sunday.
Right? Does that math work out? Oh, my goodness.
Okay. So, and both points counted.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So, Lee's leading the points. And he said, and Jack Smith was running second. And he said, I didn't hear him say it, but he said he went to Jack Smith and said, if you don't go, I won't go. And the rest of them won't affect us if any of us went. And Jack said, I'm going, you do what you want to. So Richard and Maurice, but Richard years before that him and his cousin had drove a car to Oakland, California, probably in 53.
Oh, wow.
Drove the race car out there and raced it and drove it home.
Jeez.
So I think we had a truck and a trailer then, like a 3/4 ton truck and we had Oldsmobiles. And Lee and Red Myler, Richard, and Miss Petty went to Trenton, and from right up here in this garage, me and Maurice put enough stuff in the road course car to go to Riverside. And we drove the race car out there and raced it and drove it home.
Wow.
Got it qualified. Marvin Porter qualified it for us.
Okay.
He qualified his car, I think, 52nd, and Richard and Lee's 4th. And
you said 52nd. How many cars were in the race?
He was way back towards the back. There's 50-some or maybe 60-some, but you're talking about it ain't always been this easy. But I think Darlington's has started as many as 75 cars before, 3 abreast.
Right. That's
and
wild.
But we got out there, and I could spend 2 days talking about that trip. But
what happened? What happened?
Yeah, what happened on the trip?
Do what?
What happened on the trip?
Well, we left here and went to Ashburn, hit 49. Wasn't no 85 or nothing. And
couldn't imagine not having an 85.
But Lee, we had a chassis dyno, and Lee fixed us a chart off the dyno, and it had a speed, like so many RPMs with a certain mile an hour. And he told us, said, I've put new rings and everything and rebuilt the motor, and I put you a change in oil and a filter in the car, or we got it in the car. We drive it to Shreveport, change oil and filters, go into a service station, borrow the lift, and change oil and filter, and says, "Don't run it over." I'm gonna say 60 mile an hour till you get change oil. And so we left and went to Ashburn and went down 49. But what we didn't know, there was 2 or 3 men coming up on business to talk to Lee, and they come up 49. So, and Lee tells this story, and he said in conversation, he said, "How'd y'all come up?" And they said, "Up 49. He said, "Well, you might have met our boys on the way to California." They said, "That's what that was." They was running his face. I couldn't tell what it was. But Maurice got stopped 6 times, didn't get a ticket, and I got stopped once for speeding.
6 times, you said?
But never got a ticket, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, they'd stop us. We'd climb out the window and give them us, and a lot of times they just stopped us to see what we was,
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have a number on the car going out, but they painted one on us out there, 42. And then coming back, finished 4th. The car we could have run better, but we couldn't run out but about a little less than half the tank, and then it'd start skipping. But the little gas filter had got stopped up with dirty gas we'd bought going out. And it got to doing it so bad coming home, we finally figured out it was a filter, and we didn't know it during the race. But we're coming into Wilcox, Arizona, coming home about dusk dark, probably running.
How fast do you think you were going?
Probably about 110.
Oh,
that's
And
not bad.
Maurice is driving, and the right rear hub locked up.
Oh, that's not good.
At 110.
Yeah.
And we didn't know, and it locked that wheel up, and he didn't touch the brake or nothing. About the time we got stopped, it blew the tire. So we got out and put the tire on, and when it cooled off some, it freed up enough where we could limp into town. We just barely could see the lights. Got in there and slept in the car that night, and got up next morning, went to Oldsmobile. I believe it was Oldsmobile dealership, and they had to order us a housing, 1 axle from maybe Tucson, come in on a bus the next day, and we worked and got it ready, and left out again. 3-wheel brakes, didn't have a brake on that one.
Wow.
It ain't always been this easy.
That's what I tell them. But probably the first time I flew out was in '69.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first race of the season. We went to Ford, so the first car we built was a road course car. So we fly out there and qualify and everything that rains it out, and a lot of them stay. But me and Richard and Wade Thornburg and whoever was out there with us had to fly back because we're building Daytona cars. So Friday evening, we get in an airplane, fly to Charlotte. I think it was a prop plane, passenger, probably Piedmont. And then we flew it wasn't Piedmont to California, but then we flew to California, got there Friday night, and got up Saturday morning. They called it off again. It's still raining.
Oh, wow.
So we flew back and worked again, and then we flew back and went back and won the race.
Man, that's crazy to imagine.
Couldn't imagine driving a race car across the country and then winning a race and then driving back.
Yeah.
But Richard Maurice was supposed to go, and I was going to go to Trenton with Lee and Red Myler and Miss Petty, and Richard out here in the front yard trying to walk on his hands and said he hurt his shoulder, and I'm not sure about that. So I was the next man up. I'm going to question that as long as I live.
Yeah. maybe it wasn't 100% true to that story.
I'm just saying it was Richard. And he had drove before out there, with his cousin Grady, and I think it was a 53 Dodge. But they went to Oakland, and this was to Riverside,
Yeah.
But the people out there, when we got there, they treated us like we was kids, and the drivers and everything. It was quite an experience.
Yeah. Chris, I think it's a good stopping point to take a quick break.
Quick break, get a message from our awesome sponsor who is letting us use their space today, Petty's Garage.
Appreciate that. All right, Chris, it's time to talk about our title sponsor for today's episode, which is one of my favorite places, Petty's Garage.
It's one of your favorite places. Well, it's one of my favorite places too. It was founded in 2008. Petty's Garage is the fulfillment of Richard Petty's personal passion for all things high performance.
That's right. This is a full-service speed shop formed of King Richard's fierce competitive obsession for winning both on and off the track.
The expert craftsmen at Petty's Garage have built a reputation for customers and fans nationwide as the place delivering superior engines, tuning, and the highest quality performance parts that combine to provide the ultimate driving experience.
The ultimate driving experience. That's right. Petty's Garage is the only place you'll find powered by Petty. Operates out of the original shop here in Level Cross, North Carolina. Check them out at pettys-garage.com.
And we're back.
All right. So, Dale, like we were just talking about last week, we had JD on with us, and I had to ask him, knowing how good of friends y'all are, what's it been like at the track without you there to supervise and provide some input. So I'm going to show you this quick clip from that interview.
You better be careful, JD.
So how have you managed, obviously the 2020 season was what it was, right? It was tough and a lot of adapting and had to do what we had to do. But I want to know how you managed without your supervisor, Dale Inman, being at the track every week.
Tell you what, I missed Inman. I miss him right now. It's nice to have his input every week, whether you want it or not. It's nice to have. And we used to see him every Tuesday and every weekend. And, he always, every time we tell him about something that's hard on us, he's like, it hadn't always been this easy. And he loves telling us how he had to drive to Riverside in the car they raced, and then drive it back. And it was tougher in his day, granted. But it's so cool to have Dale tell you them stories. And sometimes say, probably told you this before, and I don't stop him. I'm like, I love hearing it. Really miss Dale not being around as much as he used to be. And we try to call him, but his flip phone doesn't get very good service over there in Randleman. I have to say it. But yeah, it's funny. We're getting ready to have a discussion with him because we're just fixing the pit box up. Where he sits has a hole in a bar that something goes into to hold up a camera or something. Well, I went to put the bolts back in there and I couldn't get nothing in there. Like there's a bunch of paper or something there. So I took pliers and pullers, candy wrappers. Finally, who could have sat here like Inman?
So what, he just like shoved them in there?
Yeah. And it looked, I think it's a couple years worth because I spent 15, 20 minutes, and you pull them out one by one.
So Dale's probably up there on the pit box during the race eating. What kind of candy was it?
I couldn't tell. They were just little tiny cellophane wrappers. And
okay.
Tell there's a hole you can see.
It's probably mints. I bet that's.
I think
but he probably did he catch you?
Evidently.
We had a lot of fun with that story. Also, why I wanted to talk about driving back and forth to Riverside because that's just y'all did a lot of crazy things and that we like to hear about back in the day, but those are it's just kind of hard for us to even imagine, really.
But me and Richard, I guess we've had a lot of time to think. When at one time we was just thinking about the next race, and going back. But we talk about driving. There's a racetrack up here, Tar Heel Speedway, about 2 or 3 miles up here, and from here we drive the race cars up there, on the road, and that was in probably 62, maybe 63 and 64. 63 and 64 probably.
Wow.
And I'm not sure. Well, one time getting ready to go to Riverside, we would get the car ready, and Richard would take it down this road here.
Right.
Branson Mill Road.
Mm-hmm.
And shift the gears and make sure the transmission, the clutch, and everything, brakes was good, And one year Richard was sick, and I took it down through there. And I think Jeff Craven went with me, and there's a bridge about 2 miles down there. And we was probably running pretty good. There was a car going to come in. It stopped and didn't get in the bridge with us. But coming back, we come back pretty hard too, and shifting the gears and drove in the driveway and drove it right on the truck because the truck's ready to go to Riverside, and just had to shut the doors, and the highway patrolman drove up.
Oh, man.
He got out and looked around a little bit and somebody said, well, what's going on, and stuff like that. He said, can you believe somebody called and said y'all was running a race car up and down the road here? Can you imagine that? And he knew we had, but that's all he said. And I think Jeff Craven got out and kissed the ground when we got back. So, but that's just some stories that you could do then that you can't do now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Yeah.
So did you guys ever, driving a race car on the road, did anybody ever try and race you guys on the road when you're going to a track? Not necessarily another race car driver, but somebody out there driving a nice car.
We didn't do it all that much. I mean, I'm talking about the one trip to Riverside and then maybe driving the cars up here to Tar Heel Speedway.
Riverside's a long way, though.
No, I know that, but I don't know. I don't think we had any races with anybody. We just run hard, Probably, the car was probably capable of doing 120 mile an hour, maybe more, back then,
Mm-hmm.
But I know going across the desert, Lord, it's hot. We had no windows, and no air conditioning, of course. And I think the temperature was 120, and the car run 115 on the water temperature because it had a good radiator and everything, and that'd make you mad, just sweat just running all up, But and golly, I think we drove straight through. Had two lights, no dimmer switch, one tail light, no turn signal, no brake signals, no windshield wipers. Thank goodness it didn't rain a drop on us either way. I mean, I could talk on that trip all day. I know you want to get on to something else, but
I like hearing it. It's just a lot of things you either have to hope go right or just deal with it if they go wrong, pretty much, right?
Yeah, that was the deal. Just like we talked about the head thing at Bristol. We kind of ad-libbed it. But we towed on the ground a lot with the Petty family car. Had a tow bar and turned cables that when the car turned, it turned the wheels on the race car, and had brakes in the race car later on, when we put on brakes in the family car. But Richard tells about, driving and sitting in the seat and steering a little bit when they turn hard and put on brakes when the lead hold up his hand, towing it on the ground. And then we got trailers, and then I think Rod Osterlin was the first one to come with a big tractor and trailer from California. And now you look at what we got,
right?
And people make a living building them,
Yeah.
Was there ever, I know you guys did a lot of innovating through the years, found ways to get speed and tune your cars up, and it just kept going throughout the years. Was there ever like one piece of innovation, we'll call it, that you were most proud of or made the biggest difference with the competition?
I don't know. We had some awful good people come through here. Richie Bars was one of our best fabricators. Of course, Wade Thornburg, and I don't want to leave nobody's name out, but Richie was really a good fabricator, and if you kind of give him a hint of what you wanted, just leave him alone and let him fix it, you know. But, and I was talking about the head strap, you know what I mean. I don't think anybody ever went to that, but Richard's neck had been, been probably fractured a couple of times, about yay long. But, golly, the thing, I don't know, the window nets, it was brought on from the wreck at Darlington. And, but Richard he was always big on safety,
mm-hmm.
and fitting a seat just for him. And I know we went to Daytona one year and we'd build him a seat, and we put the roll bars inside the seat instead of hooking way back here to the roll bar and coming up through and all that stuff. And the inspectors didn't like it. They thought but it shortened up the belts that much compared to where they could stretch and all that. And now the seat belts are in there, So, and it's just so many safety things probably that come about in it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Any gray areas of the rule book that was your favorite that you would talk about?
I ain't gonna go there. And we wasn't the only one. You coming along in the period of Junior Johnson, Harry
Yeah.
Hyde, Bud Moore, Holman Moody, all that. The Wood brothers.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna touch that area.
Man, that's funny. Was there a NASCAR season, like a year, a couple years in particular, where you remember having the most fun?
I guess looking back now, it was all fun, but at the time it was happening, no, it wasn't. I'm not sure it was fun.
Mm.
I know when I'd leave here at night or in the afternoon and go home. I live about probably a mile from here, half a mile as a crow flies. I would be thinking on what I need to do the next morning to get ready. And but no, looking back, I enjoyed it, but it was pressure on us. I know we went to Riverside in 19. When did Darrell and Richard have their? What year was that? 79 when Richard won the championship from Darrell, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the statements out there, I think is 2 points separating us or something going in the last race. Richard said, "Ain't no pressure on us." I said, "It might not be none on you, but there's some on me."
Right.
And but he handled it good. He was. And then you talking about that, but we went to 1978 season and didn't win a race. That was big.
Mm.
We got flagged the winner at Atlanta next to the last race, and about 2 hours in the scoring cards after that, they give it to Donnie.
Oh, wow.
And
They had the laps mixed up or something?
I don't know what happened. Richard was up there with them, and Richard still claimed we won the race. And no disrespect to Donnie or nothing like that if any of his fans are listening, but that broke his string of winning a race in 16 or 17 years. Then we went back and won the first race in 79 when Donnie and Cale got up.
Right,
the
yeah.
last lap, so,
Everybody remembers that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do my research on you,
Okay.
and a lot of people say that you're probably one of the greatest race strategists. And from a strategy standpoint, because I come from the basketball coaching world.
Okay.
And I'm curious, when you're making decisions on the fly, are you more calculated, like are you type A, or are you more of a gut feeling type of shot caller?
Probably a gut feeling.
Gut feeling?
Yeah. But, we won the race at Daytona in 81. And that's when they downsized the cars. And we went with here's another story. Maurice said he could get more horsepower out of a Chrysler engine. So I forget what kind of car it was we built. Mike Laughlin gave us 3 chassis, front steer cars,
Mm-hmm.
versus steering arm behind the wheel. And we built I believe it was a Diplomat or something. I don't know what it was. Some kind of little square-bodied car.
That might be right.
And went to Daytona to test. And Childress had been down there with Greg Sachs, and they had turned the car over and they was spinning the cars out because it was downsized and everything. And I remember Richard saying, "I'm going out and run this thing now. Don't get too upset because I'm just going to fill it out." So he went out and ran 175 mile an hour. And that wasn't bad. Wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. And we was pretty well tickled. He said, "Wait a minute, that's wide open." Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
So I think we changed gears or done something and went back out, and he cut it clean for a plug check. And it didn't coast back from where it normally did. That's how bad the air was on it. So by lunch, we closed. We shut down and come home, and made it into a Buick. The same car turned it into a Buick, and of course, Kyle was running in. He had him a Buick, and when we get down there, and my hat's off to him, Bobby Allison and. They come with a Le Mans Pontiac. And it, just looking at it, it was smaller and more airstream and everything. And Waddell Wilson was the crew chief. I don't know who come up with it, but they done their home, and it was a 3-year-old car, and somebody done their homework, and they're still having problems driving, but our car drove pretty good, and they made they was making rule changes every 15 or 20 minutes, more spoiler lips on the spoiler and all kind of stuff. And we're running along there, and Bobby just head and shoulders above everybody, no matter what they'd done. And it was Bobby, Buddy Baker, Earnhardt, I believe Ricky Rudd, and Richard. I don't know where Pearson was in that mix or not. What kind of car he had, and for some reason we'd changed tires, and I told Richard, I said, the tires ain't making that much difference. They're not wearing, Richard. Just bear with me. We had radios then.
Right.
And so Bobby out there leading, and he runs out of gas, coasts in, and they put 2 tires on him. Rudd, Baker, Earnhardt, and the rest of them follow suit, come in, put gas in it. And coming down pit road, I told Richard, I said, we're going to gas only. And he said to himself, we're going to win this race. So we put a can of gas in it. And I think we had like a 7-second lead. And he was running the car wide open. And because the car drove that good. And coming into the trial to get checkered, he said it ran out of gas. But we figured the gas mileage all day off of drafting. And then when he ran wide open by himself, it used a little bit more than we thought it was going to. But that was a big win for us. And if we're getting off track, but that's another story, you know what I mean.
Did it still have that same engine in it, or did you swap that out too?
What do you mean, from the Dodge?
Yeah, when you came back from the Dodge.
Oh, yeah, we had to put a GMC motor in
Okay.
it, Yeah, no, we couldn't run the Dodge motor in that car.
Right. I was curious about that.
But we'd learned a lot of stuff through the Chrysler days from Larry Ratcliffe about camber gain and caster gain and all that stuff, and we applied it to that front steer car. I know Darrell was trying to explain it to Stevie, his wife. Rear steer, front steer.
How did he explain it?
And she thought steering with the rear wheels. and that was kind of a joke too, But Stevie was great, and of course Darrell was too,
Yeah, y'all had some good battles back in the day too.
Oh yeah, and Pearson, of course, I guess Richard and Pearson run first and second to each other 60 sometimes.
That's correct. I don't know what the exact number is, but
I think it's 63, and maybe Davy's got one more win than Richard, And of course, with the Wood brothers, they had Cale and Donnie and Bonnet and all that. They probably run first and second some too. So what a deal that's been with the Wood brothers.
Yeah, 63 times. That's pretty crazy.
You looking in the magic box?
Oh yeah, the Google machine over here.
Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah, and they make fun of my flip phone too. You know what I mean? Chad Canals does. Okay.
So our guy Bradley here, he does a lot of the paint schemes on the car.
Okay.
And I do video and pictures and stuff. So we're both pretty creative people. And what is your favorite paint schemes that we've run over the years, or do you not even pay attention to the paint scheme?
Not really, but that was Richard's deal. And I've always told people getting back to another story with STP, the big holdup on getting the contract done was whether we'd run a solid Dago car or not, and Rich said, no, we're going to have some blue on it. And it stood true, and later on the Indy cars, when they used to be solid day glow, they turned to petty blue and day glow because John Cock won the race in one. And John Andretti drove one that was that color, out there. Mm-hmm. But I tell people with those two colors, it was hard to mess up the paint scheme. But Richard changed them around a lot. But I'm looking at a picture now, it's got the swirls, all kind of swirls on the car, and that's kind of the tradition that he came up with. But I think this year we ran a green car one time.
We did a couple times, yeah.
And I mean, that to me it still looks good. And you know, I'm just bringing up old stories. We was up on the truck one time at Michigan. Eddie Wood was on the truck beside of our truck, and we were watching qualifying, and Bobby Hamilton sat on the pole. When he come down pit road, the fans that was in the grandstand cheering for him, and Eddie looked over at me, and he said, they still think Richard's in the car, you know. So, I mean, just some stories of stuff that, you know, I enjoy telling. But it was hard to, and then I guess, was it the 25th season where we had 25 years with STP? We had 5 different.
Mm-hmm. I think it was 96. Is that right?
Maybe it was. I don't know. But we had that silver car, had it at Talladega.
Oh, yeah. That was sharp.
And God darn, it come by about 5 times before I could pick it up. But that day glow, boy, it stood out. Lord have mercy. And, you know, now Richard's still big on having that red number on top. And if you're watching the races on television, that helps me pick the car out too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so you don't have a paint scheme you like most that stands above the rest, besides the silver one?
No, not really, because like I said, you know, it's hard to mess up. Of course, we was petty blue for a long time, just petty blue, and you know the saying was, "Here comes old blue again," you know, and they had to deal with the car. But
even those all blue cars from the past, they're still sharp looking cars, and it's just one color.
Yeah, and he wanted, when we went to Daytona, he wanted that car to be sharp. You know, mm-hmm. We'd get the car ready, work all winter on one car, you know, and then we get everything made, and he'd want to send 2 or 3 pieces off to get chromed, and that'd hold us up because chroming wasn't that popular back then. And Lord have mercy, what a time we'd have getting ready to go to Daytona. And but he wanted that. And he still does. He wants the sharp cars to look sharp. And at one time, all the cars look good now. You know, because they don't even paint no cars no more, do they?
A couple of them here and there, but you know, our stuff's all wrapped.
But you know, you can't tell the difference. But I know one time, you know, Penske's a real sharp guy all the way down through his trucks,
right?
His uniforms, his cars, and everything. And he asked Richard one time, "Can I bring my people over to look at your car?" And
that's a big compliment.
And when Jackie Stewart was the announcer for ABC, is that right?
Yeah, he came on at some point.
Yeah,
did a couple.
And I'm not saying how good he was, but he made the statement one time. It was in the mid '70s when we had that Dodge Charger. And he said, if I drove one of these cars, I'd want to drive that Richard Petty's car. And that was good.
That's
and,
a huge compliment.
And years ago when France, even Big Senior, I know one time we had somebody over here, King Hussein, I don't know which one he was, but back a long time ago, and he brought him around to show our car. And Jerry Petty, the doctor at Charlotte, Earl Campbell was the grand marshal, and they brought Earl and his brother and, you know, a little congregation of people around there, and Jerry Petty was with them, and showing him our car, and had the hood up. And I think Earl pointed to the carburetor and said, "What's that?" And I don't remember this, but Jerry Petty said it was. I said, "That's the damn carburetor." He said, "Well, I'm not a mechanic. I don't know what it is." I said, "I ain't no damn football player, but I know what a football is." And Jerry Petty said he just drawed up because Earl Campbell, you know, his legs was about, I think his thighs was about, 36 inches, you know. God. But, I mean, there's just all kind of stories that I enjoy telling.
Oh, man.
I think we're getting ready to wrap up here, Dale. We'll finish off with one last thing. So when did you start, if people don't know, if they haven't been around you in the garage and spent some time, if you're not careful, Dale Inman will come up behind you and grab you in the back of the arm or put a knuckle to your chest or something. And I've heard it means that you like it, that you like somebody, which is what I'm hoping, because that's what I take it as. But when did that start?
You know, I don't know. but there's a nerve right here. If you hit that nerve, it hurts. And I was pretty good with this knuckle in it, and Mary, when people come up and they used to say, well, you used to hit more, she don't like that, and then there's an arm twist that I had. But it's just so much different now from what it used to be, but I still like the kid and play around and getting back to missing the racing, the competition on the racetrack, not that much, but the people and the meeting with them and talking with them and joking and telling stories, I miss it big.
I think that's a perfect way to end right there.
And it ain't always been this easy.
It was great having you.
Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.